Hello, everyone. Welcome to Second Opinion. This is the show where we talk about real life and midlife, not just health in a clinical sense, but how work, money, purpose, relationships, and environment all shape how we feel in our bodies and our lives. I'm Rosemarie, a healthcare pro and a medical journalist who believes better questions lead to better decisions. Around here, we sit down with clinicians, experts, and everyday people from all walks of life because health is not lived in a silo, and clarity doesn't come from one perspective alone. So if you're navigating midlife and wondering how to optimize it all with intention and some honesty, you're in the right place. But before we get into it, this season, I'm introducing a new series called Second Wind. These conversations are about what happens when people pause long enough to ask deep questions about how they're living, not because something is broken, but because something is ready to evolve. A second wind isn't about starting over. It's about carrying what you already know forward with autonomy and some alignment. Today's conversation matters because many midlifers are successful on paper, right? They've got the street cred. They went to school. They've got the experience. They're financially okay. However, they're still wondering if this is the only way. Like, is this as good as it gets? So this episode is for anyone who's grateful for what they've built, but also curious about what is possible, especially when it comes to their work, their purpose, and long-time well-being. Today's guest is Teri Trifiletti. Now, Teri spent more than 2 decades as a cardiovascular perfusionist, near and dear to me because that's what I happen to do, which is a very niche and specialized career in healthcare. What makes her story compelling isn't that she changed careers, it's how she did it. While still practicing perfusion, Teri quietly built a real estate portfolio and a successful company, learning by doing and owning assets alongside her clinical work, designing a life with more flexibility and ownership. Because we're all looking for freedom. So this conversation isn't about leaving anything. It's about using your experience at leverage for what comes next. So Teri, thank you so much for being here today.
Good afternoon.
It's so great to have you. For anybody who has not met you, can you take us into your journey from perfusion? How did you get here today?
Well, it's been a long one, but it's been a good one, I'd say. I started out as a perfusionist right out of college. So trying to figure out, what I wanted to do when I grew up. As a freshman at Illinois Wesleyan University, wasn't really sure if I wanted to go into, the medical field or as far as what in the medical field, right? So I thought maybe pre-med, maybe nursing. One thing led to another and I discovered perfusion, and there was a bachelor's degree being offered by Rush University at the time. And so I applied to their program as a sophomore in college, and my junior year, I transferred to Rush University and finished the perfusion program there. I started my career at the young age of 22, which was a little intimidating at the time, coming out of school and kind of being around really intelligent, talented people who were much more experienced than I was. But that taught me a lot and started my career in California, then did some work back in Chicago. I eventually moved to London with my husband for about 3 years and worked at the Royal Brompton and Harefield Trust Hospital there doing cardiac surgery there, and then moved back to my former position in Chicago when we returned after our time in London, and thought that was going to be my career until I retired. Decided to get a master's degree in healthcare administration and was getting ready to take the next step once I completed that degree when fate just kind of decided to take us a different turn, and we ended up relocating from Chicago to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where I'm currently now. And that really kind of put me on a different path, one that I hadn't expected, but I think looking back on it now was kind of meant to be, and really appreciate what that opportunity brought me. We moved because my husband received a promotion and I had to turn down a promotion at the very same time. Instead of taking a director's position at the hospitals I was with in Chicago, I turned that down in order to relocate with our family to Charlotte. When we got here, that was kind of bittersweet, I'd say. I spent, a lot of time kind of mourning the loss that what could have been. But after some time here and kind of reflecting on, maybe this is an opportunity for me to do something else, I decided to pivot and continue our real estate investment kind of strategies we were incorporating while living in Illinois. And that ended up growing into creating a property management company in Charlotte where my husband and I both manage vacation rental homes around the Charlotte area. And that's where I am today.
Okay. You've had a pretty full career. And like you, I was very young. I was 22, graduated, and then I turned 23 that summer. So I feel you. It was the same. Your life was so different, I'm sure, like mine was, than a lot of my friends, like my peers. We were at a young age thrown into like a really interesting environment, I would say. Right. And I know like as a young perfusionist back in the 90s, there was like a lot of people that had entered perfusion from other, they were calling them like on the job training situations. They were a lot older than me.
Right.
Like I was in my 20s and working with people, and like 40 when you're 20 is old, you're just like life different. How do you think that served you being so young in that environment did for you today?
I think it really helped to develop my belief in myself, I guess, just building that confidence that I was trained and I knew what I was doing, even though I was so young. And yes, I didn't have any experience, obviously, when I first started, but just kind of overcoming any kind of preconceived notions, about me and my age and having to prove myself and doing it well. I think helped gain the confidence to then use that in any type of situation. When you're trying something new, you could be a little bit nervous about what the outcome might be. But having overcome that, I think helped in kind of really pursuing goals that maybe I wouldn't have tried to attempt in the first place.
I think about that all the time, just like how life was at a young age where we were in very different situations, and how that served me. But at the time, it was really stressful. And it's like when you're younger in perfusion, either people look at you like, you don't look old enough to be I've had that said to me a few times. I got into patients. They were like, you don't look old enough to be doing this. I'm like, I'm very, you're very young and you're very eager and you're very well studied. And then you're older and then you have these career transitions and then ageism is in another way. I'm like, wait a second. We've got a lot of ways to, right? And it's like either I was too young or now I'm too old. I'm like, no, it's just so funny how life is. So, okay, so you were young, you were in your early 20s. At what point did you start thinking bigger?
So my first kind of aspiration probably came around in my 30s, wanting to advance in perfusion, in the cardiac realm. So I decided to go get my master's degree, my business degree, which would have helped me move into more of an administrative role at the hospital, which I guess it was in my 30s, mid 30s, probably after I had my 2 daughters, when I started thinking I wanted something more, and never really thought about changing careers because I was on a good path. I worked in an excellent hospital. I loved my coworkers. Everything about it was lining up to be the natural next step. So that was my vision, back then.
Yeah. And I think too, you may agree or not. I'd like to hear your thoughts because we're fortunate. It's in the sense where it's advantageous and then not when it's a small niche. Nobody else in the hospital can do your job. The good and the bad, right? At the end of the day, I think healthcare in general, we're compensated pretty good. It's stable. It's very clear transaction of what's going to happen. I know if I do this, I'm going to bring home this. So when you were thinking about transition, because I know many perfusionists, when you work in these high acuity settings, you're like, I can't sustain this, like at this, nor do you want to. You're thinking like, what else? How do I give myself some freedom? So let's talk about the whole permission, because it's a really good career path, giving yourself permission to like take that next step. Where it's like, cause I know you quietly, it's like gradually built your company, but if you could talk about that whole process of just going for it.
Well, so we started investing in real estate, in the late 2000s. Owning property, learning about what it takes to find a deal that will be profitable, property that will appreciate in value. We of course rented all of our homes, so we bought real estate and held on to it for a while. And through that process, we learned a lot about how that all works, and then kind of the ins and outs of being a landlord. We did that all while working full time. And I really didn't even consider at that time about making it a full-time career at all. I'd say, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. And like what you said, this is a great career. It can be very financially rewarding, but it can be very stressful. But I just thought, well, this is what I've chosen and this is the path I'm going to stay on. I'm sure a lot of people also have that golden handcuffs realization where if I go somewhere else, am I giving up a little bit of that financial security? So, my focus was always on, well, where do you go from being a perfusionist that will still, provide that type of financial security for the future? And so administration was kind of the next natural kind of step in my thought process. Now, I'd say because we relocated, it forced me to then think out of the box because I had two options. I could pursue a career in medicine and in administration in Charlotte, or I could do something completely different. And we were already planning on reinvesting in property in Charlotte. So whether or not that became full time, we were still going to be involved in that. But when we bought that first home and I still hadn't figured out where I exactly wanted to end up in healthcare, it just, I don't know, things just sort of naturally progressed. So we bought one property, then we bought another one, and then a third one came along within 2 years, and it just started growing from there. And it got to the point where I said, well, I could probably give up being a perfusionist and run this real estate vacation rental management full time. And I sort of did it a little bit naively and went all in. I mean, I had experience with managing rental property, but not in the vacation rental space. And I sort of took a risk. And honestly, it was maybe based on the fact that I wouldn't have to be on call anymore. I wouldn't really have to, work weekends, even though I do work weekends now. But for me, the time I put into work is on my own time. I pretty much get to decide what I do when I want to do it versus someone else telling me that. I did have a spouse who had a full-time corporate job, which was kind of my security blanket to give me that opportunity to take a chance to do something else. I know not everybody has that luxury, but if you do, then I would really recommend seriously thinking about pivoting and doing something different, taking a chance on yourself. Even if you don't know everything you need to know, you will learn. And I made mistakes along the way, but luckily they were risk assessed, I guess.
Yeah.
You assess your risk before making that decision. And usually it turned out for the best.
Yeah. You trusted your gut. You're like, I'm doing this. And you were like listening. It's like, isn't it funny? It's like, we know this stuff, but then it takes us like how many years to like actually trust it and listen to it.
Right. So, had we not moved, I bet you 100% I'd be sitting behind a desk in a hospital. And maybe I'd be just as happy. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know. It's hard to say. You're like, even when you're choosing a life in perfusion, I was going down the pharmacy path and then I switched, I switched, majors. And my parents were like, this better be good because you've got siblings behind you. You've got this many years. So this better be. And I'm like, no, this is the right thing. But it's just funny when we're younger or when your back's up against the wall, which even in perfusion, it's you by yourself, right? Like you're in there, you're making these judgment calls, but then why don't we do that all the time in real life? It's like, I know I can do this, right? There's a surgeon looking at you. Something's not going. You're by yourself, depending on the situation that you're in. It's like, well, I can do this for that guy. Why am I not doing this for myself?
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way. And it's scary to make a decision to do something different.
1,000%. And like you said, the financial risk. And thank you for being honest too about you having a spouse, right? You're like, hey, you almost have to use your resources. If you can lean on a partner and maybe say if not, like how have let's go in more about your skills now that you're looking at the big picture, because it's easier to say when you've done it, right? When you're first making the leap, but when you're now looking back, the skills, because there's so many people that are listening or watching who might not be in healthcare, but they've got skills. We're in such a focused environment. How other skills did transfer over? Because I feel like if perfusion skills can transfer over, how other skills can transfer over. And that did, now that you're looking in hindsight.
Yeah. So, I mean, perfusion, yes, definitely prepared me to do something like this through several different skills, which I think apply to pretty much any career out there. As a perfusionist, we're always assessing risk. Outcomes are unknown when you're operating and you're running a case. Nothing is standard. And you're always making decisions without all the information. So you have to have backup plans and you have to have procedures in place. So in real estate, in running a vacation rental home, I have backup plans. If my cleaner calls in sick, then I have somebody I can call. We have procedures in place on everything that we do when we take a booking, before a guest arrives, while the guest is there, and then after they check out. We're always making decisions under pressure. Everybody, I'm sure, makes decisions under pressure in their job, which applies to this as well. If you have an emergency, if the heat goes out at a house, then you need to start calling somebody to go over there and repair it. Another skill would be accountability and documenting everything that happens. So in perfusion, you've got your perfusion record, you're documenting everything that's happening during the case. And same in real estate, we're documenting all the information about a property, about the guest. And then if there's, an issue, then we have proper documentation. We take photos of a property before a guest arrives. That way, if they break something, if they deny breaking something, then we do have documentation to support any claim we might have after they depart. And then you do learn how to talk to people, with a surgeon who's yelling at you. You're not going to yell back at him. You're probably going to try to remain calm and respond in a way to de-escalate any tempers. So the same goes, when you're dealing with the public and a guest might be unhappy and they might call you with a complaint. you kind of treat that the same way. So, there are a lot of skills that we gain that we don't even think we have, but they do transfer to just about anything else you might want to do.
No, that's really helpful. And for the record, as you get older, you do yell back sometimes at your surgeons. But you can't do that out of school. I tell the students, I'm like, don't do what I'm doing right now. But this guy's got to he needs to be kept in line. I'm like, anyways, I just love having these jokes because not everybody can. It's like I geek out on this stuff because when there's somebody that you're talking to that gets it. And Teri and I Teri was so kind to reach out on a LinkedIn post that I put out there as I'm looking for guests to build this platform because I think it's so important at this point of life where, again, like I say in the intro, what else, right? You've got all these things. You're like, something's not adding up or you want more. Teri reached out to me and I just discovered right before we jumped on this interview that there is a Facebook group for women in perfusion who I think is really, really helpful because when we entered perfusion in the 90s, it was a very male, I felt like, I don't know if you had a different experience, but where I was in Philadelphia, it was a very male dominated field. There was only 2 women in my perfusion class. Of 6, 2 of us were women. And the groups that I worked in, my first group, I was the only woman. I was like the little sister. I think also in the very beginning, a lot of women didn't go into perfusion because it was so rigid. There was no, maternity leave. There was no, heck, you can't even call out sick. Like you go to work with the flu, you go to work, like that's part of healthcare. That's how I feel like we grew up in healthcare. It was like very militant, there was no calling out sick. There was no, you made it happen. Your life's falling apart. You still showed up there. You just did it. I don't know. And that is like real life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel like you created that group, which is so fun to find out, seeing these young women. I think things changed because of this. More women getting into the field in healthcare, in medicine, and especially cardiac surgery too. Because you can say healthcare, but cardiac surgery is a very different way of life, right? So I realized you started that group. So there's definitely, now I can see knowing that you're still, even though are you still pumping, or you're actually transitioned outside of perfusion now? Are you officially like 100% real estate?
Transitioned out.
Okay.
I received my CCP emeritus in 2019.
I think what's great is that you're still involved by doing groups like this. So also for people who feel like, I really like what I do, I don't really want to leave, there's ways to be involved without doing the job, almost like providing a mentor environment for.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I still think about perfusion. I still, little bit in the back of my head, I think about going back, but then reality hits me and I say, no. But yeah, I still want to be involved and mentor anybody I can. And I started that group when we moved to Charlotte, and I still, follow it and pay attention and want to be a part of it still.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, we're living in a world where, as I said, times are changing. And I think like we know this since the pandemic, was that it really opened up, I think, things for people like you and I, where there was not really a window to do outside of perfusion. Things change, right? There are now locums perfusion groups where people can step outside of their traditional roles and still work in a clinical or work in any set. Like for us, I feel like there was more job. If you're not in medicine, I feel like there's temp agencies all over right? There's different ways to stay employed. For us, we didn't really have that privilege. We had to stay at your hospital, stay at a group, and that was it. Things opened up where we could venture out, right? Now that they saw it was like all or nothing with us. It was like, well, if we don't hire her, on her terms, or him or her, we're not going to have a perfusionist. I noticed you worked shout out to Perfusion Life, because I noticed you worked for Perfusion Life, which I feel like they have such a beautiful niche for people like us who want to venture out. I didn't know I was going to mention them, but I noticed that, on LinkedIn, you had worked with them too. I mean, things like that, right? Helped facilitate being out, thinking outside the box with your employment.
Yeah. And, we've had this topic in the Women in Perfusion group about, somebody's asking, I don't know if I can do this for 10 more years, or, I'm starting to get burned out. So, a lot of people mentioned, well, you could do locum, you could do ECMO coverage, or getting into the medical device industry, right? So, and I've looked at that too. You can go and help with like transcatheter valve procedures, and or be some kind of educator, where you come into the OR and you're teaching them how to use a new device or something like that. So you can still stay involved in those ways.
I agree with you. But like you said, it all comes down to you trusting yourself and going for it.
You have to trust yourself 100%.
I think people who worry are the ones that are most capable. To be quite honest with you, people who don't give a flip about things, they're the ones like, that's how they roll. People like us who question in these high environments, I'm like, what's that?
I think you need a little bit of both. You need to sort of have that attitude of, I'm diving into the deep end. I'm not even going to think about it, but you got to have that other friend who tells you, no, why don't you just walk in over here? Just stick your toe in the water, right?
I'm going to pull it back to real estate too, because I will admit, I am obsessed with Ryan Serhant and like owning Manhattan. I mean, I bought my apartment. Oh my God. But you know what? Here's the thing with him is that what I really enjoy about him, and when you follow him on social media and you follow his platforms outside of his firm, it's that he uses these skills, right? Like it's all transferable to no matter what you do. I know it's reality television. And when I was buying my apartment last year, my brokers are great. They're like, you need to stop watching these reality real estate shows because this is not, I was like, well, in my world, I wanted to go down like owning Manhattan. I'm like, I'm not buying a $20 million loft in Tribeca, but it was fun. I kind of went into it. But with real estate, I feel like when I was preparing for this call, I was thinking, oh, I know a few people that went down the real estate that are successful, that had transitioned outside of perfusion. And my two real estate brokers that I dealt with, the one was a respiratory therapist. And he went down the road of real estate and he's really happy. And then, like you were saying, like he keeps his license current and then he'll help. But that hasn't happened since the pandemic for him. Like he went back because real estate was kind of interesting, right? It was fluctuating, but he knew he could go back to the hospital. But let's talk about real estate because I feel like a lot of people say, I should get my real estate license. So realistically, take me through, in case someone is watching and it's like, oh, maybe I'll consider real estate. What was that like? What would be a step one in the real estate realm?
Well, I think if you're working a full-time job and you're considering maybe doing something in real estate, property management, for me, and in my opinion, would probably be kind of the path I would want to take versus becoming a buying and selling agent. Buying and selling real estate is hard. It's not like what you see on TV. You need to find clients, you need to sign them, you need to market the property, you need to get the right price, and then you earn a commission, but part of your commission goes to your broker. That could be really difficult. So unless you're going to go all in and that's what you love to do, I would recommend, and you don't even need a real estate license to purchase a property and then rent it to somebody. You don't need a license for that. So, we started in 2008. During the housing crash. We bought a lot of distressed properties and rented them out long term. And so with that, you don't need a license. You find a property, you rent it out, and you just hold on to it. It's really a long-term plan. 'Cause not only are you maybe earning a little bit of cash flow every month, but you're earning that appreciation in the value of the property. So when you go to sell it, hopefully you're making some profit when you go to sell it. So that would kind of be my recommendation to anybody who's just trying to get a little bit of experience in real estate is just go find a property and rent it out.
Interesting. So would you say, is that similar to, say, Airbnb or something like that?
So yeah, you can do Airbnb with any type of property you own, and you don't need a license to do that. As long as you own the property, you can rent it out however you like.
How did you know, like, your first property, like where to buy? How did you get like information? Buying your first property, like what does that look like? Like,
Well, when we bought our first property in Illinois, we basically just looked for properties that were in foreclosure or short sale at the time because of the housing crash. You know, they were abundant. Today, it would be, you know, you'd have to put a little bit of research into it, find out what the rental rates are in your area, and then decide if, you know, the home's purchase price makes sense in order to, you know, charge the correct rental price. Now, we strictly do short-term vacation rentals today. I don't do any type of long-term rental management. So the same type of process happens is you look at a home and you assess the purchase price against what you think it can earn in a year if you were to rent it out on Airbnb, something like that. So there's some formulas you can use. There's some spreadsheets, you know, you can find online to help you kind of go through all those numbers. But we have a friend who is in the Charlotte real estate industry, and he sort of helped guide us on finding the first home that we bought here.
okay. Now, do you offer any kind of consulting in that capacity?
We do. We've helped a few people sort of work through the financials of potentially purchasing a home. So we can do consulting when it comes to trying to assess a property if it makes sense for short-term rental.
Okay, that's good to know for anyone listening. As we transition and start to wrap things up here, it is called Second Opinion. It's all about getting different perspective and with your health. With that, what is the best advice that, say, you've received when you've been in life in general or going down this journey?
The best advice I've received,
or the worst. It can be the worst advice can also be the best. Sometimes we get more bad advice and we figure out the hard way.
No, it's not. I didn't know you were going to ask this.
No.
Oh, this is a hard one. I'd say there isn't any one piece of advice that jumps to the top of my head when I think about it. I'd say I've received lots of wisdom over the years, and this wisdom has been cumulative. So it's been compounding. And through the risks I've taken, I've built enough confidence to then take more risk the older that I get. And then that compounded with the realization that we only have a short time on this earth. And now sort of appreciating the smaller things, the little things in life, more than what you appreciate when, you know, you're 20 years old. That all morphs into just kind of a different way of thinking on a daily basis, really. I mean, I wake up every day thinking, what do I want to do today versus what do I have to do today? And being able to get to that point, I think, is a real blessing. If you can create a life where you have the choice, where you have options, and, you know, you're emotionally fulfilled every day, that's something, that's an achievement.
For sure. You hit on something. Somebody's watching and they're feeling stuck. Maybe one lesson that maybe you've learned that helped you get out of that when you felt a little you didn't have an option.
I guess really breaking it down on why do I feel stuck? Is there something concrete that will absolutely not allow me to change my path? Or is it just my frame of mind? You know, we are usually our worst critic, and we will talk ourselves out of almost anything. So really taking a deep dive into why is it that I feel stuck, and can I actually do something about it? Having the courage to do something about it. And I bet you that you just lack the little bit of courage in order to take that step, that you can get unstuck if you really want to.
Yeah. No, like we talked a little bit about, like, we've had in this situation where our back's been up against the wall. When you're put in that situation, we make it happen. We're pretty good at getting ourselves out. Yeah.
Yeah. In an emergency situation, you will make it happen. So think of, your life is an emergency situation. I've got to make something happen.
Yeah.
And you will. You will if that's what you decide you want to do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap things up. Is there something that we didn't mention today that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we covered all the bases.
You feel good? You feel good about this? I know too. It's like, I feel like also that, not that we have an obligation, but somewhat in life, like, we're both women and, we were in these fields where you have transitioned out. I'm also, like, realistically, like, how do you sustain this? I went back to school at 40, for journalism as an outlet of frustration, purely because I saw so much in healthcare that I said, this is just not right. My mom was funny. She's like, don't tell people you're a journalist. Nobody likes them. It's like not about selling anybody out. It's about empowering people to know where they are in the healthcare system, like learning things and like bringing awareness. It's not so much who did what. It's more making you aware as a consumer. These are the things that are going on, how to live a better life. That's truly, because we see a lot of things in the hospital setting, right? And that's why we're usually the advocates in our families, because we know things that most people don't understand, right? So, but anyway, so I feel like and then also for having this platform, it's great to provide a space to share information so other people can listen and learn and be inspired, whether you're in your 20s or you're our peer in your, 40s and 50s, So thank you for being here today and for trusting me, because we didn't know each other. So reaching out to me and taking a risk and approaching me about being a guest. Well, with that, I'm going to wrap it up here, summarize everything, because I just feel like this conversation is a reminder that change doesn't have to be so dramatic to be meaningful. And sometimes it's about widening the lens and letting your experience, our life, our experience, our knowledge are in our favor, not something to be ashamed of. And, and health is not just about health in a clinical saying. It's just allowing health to include how you work, how you live, how you earn, and how much choice that you actually have. And if this episode inspired you or sparked something for you to create or to think differently or gave you language for something that you've been feeling, just sit for that a little bit. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because as I always say, the more the attention interviews like this get, the more that you can help somebody else feel unstuck or get to their next level in midlife. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for being curious about what comes next. From New York, this is Second Opinion, where age is always the advantage. Until next time.